Hello everyone, welcome everyone to another GDG Tech session. Glad to have you here today with us, and I may ask you if you are ready for another interesting talk. If yes, let's do it. But first, a little bit about our organization and what we have accomplished in the last months. So the first event that we have happened in the 19th May of the last year, and so far we have more than 3,000 total views and more than 150 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Also, we've run more than 15 tech sessions, and we have attendees from United States, Portugal, Spain, North Korea, etc. But of course, that we can achieve this by through our team. So we have Fernando Martins, Diogo Freitas, and also me from DGG Madeira, and also Rustam, that is a Google developer expert for cloud, that lives in Oslo, Norway. And today we have Majid, and he will talk about Flutter progressive web apps. And now it's time to call him to the session. So, Majid, thank you for being with us here today. Majid is a Google developer expert and passionate software developer with years of developing and architecting complex web and mobile applications. And also, he's an award-winning book author and instructor at Udemy and Pluralsight. We are for sure in good hands. So, Majid, thank you for being here with us, and thank you for accepting our invite for being here.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry. Just to before we start with the sessions, and just to alert the who are assisting us that, as always, use the YouTube chat to interact with the speaker. So Majid will answer the questions at the end of the talk. And now, yes, Majid, the floor is yours, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, and thanks, GDG Sessions. So this is a pleasure to be here for sure. So let's get started. We're going to talk about Flutter PWA and it's how it works and what it is actually. So the goal of this talk is just to bring you some information about PWA and how it works in Flutter. So if you are considering doing some kind of cross-platform application, you perhaps know that Flutter can compile to several different platforms, including web. And by having this web application and turning that to a PWA, you can, of course, get much better performance. At least the second load and subsequent loads can be much faster. But let's get into it and see everything related to that. It might become a little bit simple for many of you, but that's just an introduction, or let's say it's just an entry level. So we will definitely get to more advanced either at the end of the talk or another talk. So I have different talks also related to that. Let's keep in touch and learn more about that. So I'm gonna start first of all for all of you who probably don't know, like Flutter also compiles to web. I'm gonna show you some demos, cool demos. This is a game. You probably know this game. I'm playing right now. I'm playing right now. So when I share the slides, you can play this game as well. Once you actually get my slides later, you will see that these games are, first of all, built by Flutter. You will get access to the source code. And also, it runs completely offline. I mean, you can definitely turn off your Wi Fi or internet and just reload the page, and you see that this page is working. So, I'm going to show you another example here. Is that, let's go to the next one. This is another example. These are my favorite examples from Flutter Web. So you see like a very smooth animation, movement, and these are all built with Flutter right now. And that's compiling to web. I'm running that in the web. So another example, which perhaps many of you have seen, is this example. You see my mouse is actually right now playing and you'll see the animations. Of course, in the stream, probably you see it a little bit slow. It's much faster when you play yourself. So go ahead, check this out. And one cool thing that these are all PWA as well. So if you run this application for the first time, then it will run. It will be run like completely offline. All right, let's talk about this talk. For Flutter PWA, actually, there are 3 common scenarios. Or for Flutter Web. Generally, if you want to build a PWA, or if you have a single page application, or probably you have already a mobile app built by Flutter and you want to use also a web version of it. So most of the cases, Flutter Web at this time, it's pretty good for applications that are kind of like a supporting application for the mobile application, or perhaps an application that does not need to be accessible publicly, or you may not need to have SEO heavily, or it's just a dashboard after logging, or things like that. But I have a good news for you is that the Flutter Web team is working on these Flutter Web scenarios to make them much better and bring a whole new stuff to the Flutter Web. We've seen surveys and we've seen a lot of communication between developers, us, and also community and Flutter team. So they're asking us what we want and they're trying to make Flutter Web better. So what I'm telling you today, it might not be valid in 6 months, but that's technology usually, right? So what I'm saying is that Flutter Web is getting much better. What I'm going to talk about it today, in short, is we will go through the PWA generally to make sure that we are all in the same page, talking a little bit about Service Worker and Web and Manifest, and also at the end, we go deeper to the PWA version of the Flutter and see how it actually works. So I'm going to have a demo for you. Later, you will get access to this slide. You will be able to watch all of these slides for sure. All right, so I think I've been introduced to you. Again, very short. My name is Majid. I'm based in Oslo. I'm a GDE, Google Developer Expert for Flutter and Dart. And I'm also a passionate software engineer, just like you. Apart from my daily work, which is a solution architect, I'm also doing a lot of community things and creating courses and publishing so many free stuff for the community. All right, but what is PWA? Well, definitely, if you're watching me, perhaps you have some kind of clue what it is. I'm not going to go through the basics, but we all know about the characteristic of a PWA. That's the 3 important things about a PWA, and that's reliability and how fast an app can work, and also engaging, right? So these are the things that in any web application, when you want to turn them to a progressive web app, you need to consider. So a reliability lies where the app should work like a native app. It should just work when there is no, let's say, internet, or low connection. It must still work properly. It must be fast, like reaction, interaction on the web. So it must be quick and fast, loading, initial loading, and etc. And engaging, you will send messages or try to communicate with your customer in different ways. In fact, there are a whole lot of other things around PWA. So it must be responsive, secure, engaging, as I said, native-like experience, and whole lot of other things. And if you actually make all of these things into your web application, even without turning them to an offline or installable application, still, it's a great thing to do. Some people say, yeah, I want to make a PWA, and they think that by only adding a service worker for caching the data and loading offline, or maybe just a web app manifest to just load, show the install button and things like that. It's a PWA. In fact, it is, but I personally believe you need to take care of your application very well. You need to make sure it's fast. It's just giving a very nice feeling user experience to your user. It's all about user experience, right? There are a lot of APIs available to make this happen. To bring your web application as close as possible to your user. There are lots of APIs. This picture is from 2019, one of my talk actually, but since today, 2021, we have a lot of new features and APIs ready in the browsers. There might be some inconsistency, but there are a lot of good APIs that you can work with. So, but the two main things for creating a PWA, for sure, it's service worker and web app manifest, right? So a service worker generally is just a script. It works as a proxy between you, your application, and your server and the cache. So it's a script that runs in the background. So in fact, to simplify it, it's just like when request and respond goes to either cache or network, it should actually pass service worker, and that's generally what it happens for service worker. So that's why I call this service worker like kind of like a brain of PWA. The service worker has a life cycle, or the way that it works is that generally you have an install event. That means your service worker is now installed. So it's a very good time for pre-caching stuff. And then after that, then you will have active events, which means that then that is completely active and is taking over all the pages or all the scopes. So then it's a very good time to clean up and just make sure that everything is working properly after this new service worker is activated. These are all events. So I'm going to show you quickly how you can actually reach to these events in service worker. Once it has installed and active, then it goes to ideal, which means you can start looking at or waiting for some other activity happens. Receive a message, fetch, or background things and things like that. So when you have a fetch, for example, you're fetching index or an app.js or a picture, then the request goes to this service worker. Wake that up, do something, and then you will get the response. So here are some examples for listening to these events. All right. Okay. For a second, I thought that I lost my my screen. All right. So here are some examples here. So you'll see that you have a listener for active and install, as I said, and also fetch. I'll show you more of these examples at the end. So for making sure that this request actually goes to service worker, you need to use fetch from your application. So it doesn't work with old-fashioned like Ajax version or HTML, HTTP or stuff like that. So it just doesn't work with that. You need to use fetch for sure. And that request then goes to service worker, and you can do something with that. For example, in a service worker, one thing that you can do is technically caching the static assets. And here is what you can do, for example, during the install event. That's the scaffolding of your project, different files that we can add them to cache. So to access this cache is just a cache API. This is a different cache from what you probably know. This is a particular cache for storing request and respond. You can retrieve that anytime. So I'll show you how you can get access to this cache later at the end when we are talking about Flutter service worker. So as I said, then you have fetch event. So you have a listener, then you can actually listen to the request that is coming, right? So here is the request from the event, and then you can do something here, because why not? You can do anything. You manipulate your request, and then you can respond with something else, right? Here is as simple as this, but I'll show you some example in Flutter Web. For example, you can respond with a cache request. So you already cached a request. So you match your request. Let's say it's an image. You already cached the image respond. You match that from this request for the second time from your cache. Then it will respond with that response. So it doesn't go through the network anymore. It's just in the browser, in the client's browser. That is actually a cache-only strategy. What I said is just a cache strategy. That's very simple. But when you have another strategy, that's network only. For example, you can say, hey, I want always the request, or this request goes to network. So you can actually return with fetch again. So anyway, fetch it, network only. I don't need cache for this. I want fresh data. Let's take an example. You have a stock market app, and always some requests should return fresh, but some can be cached. You can actually mix and match different caching strategy. Like you can cache first and fall back to network, or the other way around. Maybe you can have network phase and first, and then falling back to cache. There are different strategies. I just put these 2 slides so then you can go and learn more about this caching, how this stuff works. I just added here, so if you are more curious to know, then you have some references. But then let's talk about web app manifest. Then the service worker part is making your application more reliable, and then make it more like a native app, like it make it like offline and things like that, right? But then you want a way to install your application. You want a way to, when you open the app from the home screen of a mobile application, then a mobile device, then it will actually open up like a native app. Like you have a background color, name, or maybe a logo or stuff like that, like a onboarding screen. So then you have web app manifest, which is a JSON file technically, and then it just contains some keys like short names, icons, backgrounds, and things like that. So how you can access to this manifest is that you can go to your browser console, developer tools console, and then you can open up your application, and then here you go. You have your manifest tab, and then you can check all of these manifests in the browser. You don't need to necessarily open to check everything out, right? But then these are the things that makes a web application a PWA. But then now we have Flutter. Let's talk about Flutter. But then Flutter Web, first of all, how it works. It's pretty simple. Flutter has a framework layer, which has all of these design, widgets, rendering pipeline, animations, painting, and gestures, and foundation, and all of these things, right? These are all written in one language, and that's Dart. If you don't know Dart, I would say that Dart is pretty simple for web developers. Don't scare. I guarantee 1-2 days you will learn Dart. That's pretty simple language. So, but then how then we create a web application? Technically, the Flutter engine is going to go through a layer that is going to compile your Dart code to HTML, CSS, Canvas, WebGL, WebAssembly, and stuff. But let's take a look at that. Flutter is using Dart2JS tools from Dart language to generate JavaScript file from Dart. That's one thing. That's cool. So then you already can use a lot of web APIs directly in Dart. There's no restriction. So like you can use anything literally, but it's in Dart. But then it will compile to JavaScript. But the Flutter renderer engine has two engines. It has HTML renderer and it has Canvas keyed renderer. The difference between these two is that the Canvas keyed renderer is much more performant and probably more accurate towards to what you have done, but it's actually run and actually render everything in the canvas in your browser. It's also a little bit more, let's say, compared to the HTML renderer, it's more costly in terms of size. But it actually leverages WebAssembly and SKI engine to render everything. Flutter Web is working on these two renderers to make them much more smaller, by the way. That's a good things that they mentioned. But regardless of which of these you use, you will get a very nice Flutter Web application. Again, based on those use cases. I'm going to show you a quick demo here. What you see here, it's not, let's look at that. This is also has a sound. Unfortunately, I can't share the sound, but I will speak for you. What you see right now, it's not a video. It's built by Flutter Web. It's running with Flutter Web. This is so cool because it's very smooth. It's like 60 FPS and it's quite fast, right? So you can later come to this link and have a look at the source code, how they have done this. You might see a little bit laggy in the stream, but then definitely later you can check yourself on your computer and you see how faster it is. Okay, I want to actually right. Let's move on. All right, let me quickly stop this. All right. Well, actually, I can't stop this because it's just the web application is running. I'll move on to the next slide. All right. I see myself freezed. Is that something that you all see? If yes, then maybe I should fix my camera. How about now? I think it's working. Okay, good. Let's continue. Yes. Okay. So, but then when you create Flutter application, here is where you get your Flutter, your web folder, right? So you get your Flutter folder here, pretty good. You have your manifest.json file, and here is where you can manipulate your manifest and, you know, theming, name, and stuff like that. But let's move on to more, a little bit advanced stuff in Flutter Web. If you open the index.html file, there is, this file actually is changing rapidly. So since my previous talk a couple of months ago until now, this file and the script here has changed several times for each version. So this is a newest version, and I'm going to actually show you how it actually works. In the index.html file, maybe you can just show my slides. That's fine. In index.html file, so what you can do here is a very simple script that loads your main.dart.js file after compilation. And then here's where you can also have a service or an installation of your service worker. So this is what we are very interested. Usually when page is loaded, because we don't want to interrupt anything in the page, we try to register our service worker. The registration is pretty straightforward. You have Flutter, underline service worker, underline service, underline worker. And that's where you can get your Flutter service worker URL and then register it via Navigator. So there are a couple of things also happening here. I'm not going to go through each line, but I'm going to quickly explain what is happening. The thing is happening here is that whenever this service worker is a new version is installed, then the state of the service worker will be activated, right? That's the time we want to actually load our JavaScript file here, the main dart file. So we're sure that now service worker is registered and activated. And that's a good thing because that makes our application loading some of our static cache from static assets from the cache. You might have other different scenarios here. For example, if you already cached or it's already installed, then it's maybe other things. Then you might want to actually refresh your registration and update your registration and things like that, right? When especially there is a new service worker available. These are all the scenarios that is now covered, luckily, in the index.js, and then you will see it works accurately for your web application. It will update your service worker, will update your scope and everything like that, which is perfect. So this is also at the end, if something goes wrong or it's like service worker is not supported for some reason, then we just load our JavaScript file at the end. So basically it's that. But let's say we are now building our application. Let's say you work with your Flutter application and how you want to build it's completely up to you, right? All right. So now you build and you can go to the build folder. You can open up the Flutter service worker .js, which we just registered. Here is where you get a whole lot of things. I'm going to quickly explain here because it's very important you understand what's going on here. You might want to actually manipulate this file later for some reason before you deploy. Although this file is auto-generated from Flutter framework, so every time actually you build, it will be updated. That's very important, keep in mind. But you can also maybe ignore that, eject that, and say, I don't want this at all. Then you might want to do it yourself with other approaches. There are other approaches, to be honest. And one of those approaches are using Workbox JS, for example, after you build, and you can do everything yourself. And I have to also mention that I'm also working on some solution with Workbox JS to make it more Dart compatible. So then you might have a Dart version of Workbox, but something coming later this year. So then you have all of your cache names and cache and resources with the hash code, which make sure that these files are changed or not. It's all good. Then the first thing will happen is, as I also showed you, you're going to go to install phase. In the install phase, you're going to actually cache your resources here. That's a good thing. The first things that you will you want to do here. Another thing that you want to do here, then after it's activated, it will go and does some procedure here. I will quickly just tell you, but reading this code is fairly simple. I just want you to understand what's going on here if you want to manipulate it. What really happens during the activation is that we'll go and check all of those cleanups that is required. For example, you have a new manifest, you have a new set of files or static assets that you want to put into the cache. You might want to delete the temporary cache. You might want to delete the a previous version of the cache because of different reasons. You want to go and clean all of those things and add your new static assets to the cache. Here's mostly actually for the cleanup, the activation part. But then you go to the ideal part where I said we'll have fetch, right? So then Flutter Web will have a path, a routing. So it depends on which routing version actually you use, a routing strategy you can apply. But we have hash and also non-hash based routing in Flutter. But then what it happens during the fetch is that it's going to check each of these URL first of all, and then add them to your probably cache. It just makes sure that what should come to the online fetch strategy, for example, and what should be in the cache only strategy. We have two different things. It must be probably downloaded from offline cache, or maybe it should come from online cache. Here's a little bit of logic here. Again, I don't need to read line by line. When you look at that yourself later in the slides, you will definitely figure out, and you can manipulate that completely. You can get a URL from the request and say, if this URL is that, do something else, for example. Everything is possible in PWA, in Service Worker generated by Flutter Web. When you have both of these ready, Service Worker and Manifest, then you will get the install app pop-up in different platform. It shows up differently for sure. So you can install that on your home screen in Android probably. It doesn't work in iOS because generally Web Apps Manifest is not supported on iOS. Install from home doesn't work still there, but the rest of the platforms and browsers, different platforms, even Mac, like Chrome on Mac, still it can show this install modal. So once you want to check actually your Service Worker is installed or not for the first time, definitely check out application and go to Service Worker. You will see the latest version. You will see how many times it has been installed, if it's running or not. You can also play around and send some push or maybe sync and different strategies. We can also look at the cache here. Look at the cache that we actually defined in the beginning. We have a manifest cache and also an app cache that we are actually adding all of our requests here. And one of those requests is this main.dart.json, .javascript, right? And you know, this is the main file of the Flutter application. So if you cache that for the first time, the second subsequent of loading this file will come from the cache from Service Worker. If the first time takes, let's say, 10 seconds, second time will become milliseconds. So quite fast. So I'm going to show you one demo here. Still, it's working completely offline. Here is a demo of a Facebook clone with friends from the community. And the source code is available. You can definitely go and check out this source code, how it's completely built with Flutter Web. It's working, and I'm going to also show you how responsive is that. So in the next slide. So here is a responsive version of that. You see that on mobile and as well as on tablets. So it actually loads in the other screen of mine, but not in this screen for some reason. Maybe I can go back and come here. That's strange because it's working in another. I have two screens here. It works in one of the screen, but not the other one. But you can check this later. Don't worry about it. You'll see even the source code. And I have another great example of Flutter Web, and that's what I have added here. Later, I'll strongly recommend you to go and check out these sources, and you will see how great they have built a Flutter Web and turn them into a PWA with Flutter. And let's have a quick summary, and I let you to ask me any question technically. First of all, we quickly wrapped up around PWA fundamentals, and then we quickly went through Service Worker, how it works, what are the different stages of Service Worker lifecycle, and then also talking about fetch and different cache strategy. We reviewed very quickly Web App Manifest, and we went through the Flutter Service Worker and the couple of scripts that they are doing over there, as well as the app manifest and the installation or the script for the installation registration, for the Service Worker. I have another slides if you want to learn more about advanced patterns in PWA. I do have another slide which I put in this slide, so you will check it out later. With that said, thank you very much for having me and listening to me. I know I talked probably very quickly. It's a lot to cover. It's very hard to just add everything here, but I can answer a lot of questions if there are any. I will be happy to answer. If not, I also keep you encouraging to keep in touch with me. Different platforms, maybe Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, my newsletter, my website, wherever you find me, technically. And so I can answer any question later. I now want our amazing host. Yes, Carlos is here.
Hi, Majid. Yeah, so
Hello.
we have some question. We have a question here in YouTube chat, so I think we can also redirect them to you. So, can we do CRUD operations in a PWA, and how does it work in terms of synchronization with the online database?
Yes. Very good question. First of all, you can actually capture different operation method, HTTP method in service worker, right? You can say if it's post, for example, or if it's going to this URL, this is post, then probably do something else. But generally, what I showed you today was mostly about getting stuff or read, let's say. But then let me explain a couple of things. First of all, when you say a CRUD operation, PWA is a web application. It's nothing else, right? So if you can do anything with a web application, you can do with a PWA. The difference here is that you have a proxy, which is service worker, and you can do a whole lot more here. Manipulate your requests. Let me give you an example. You have, let's say you have a create operation, which you want to post something to a HTTP endpoint, right? In a normal application, you post, and let's say at the same time, the user will lose internet. Then what will happen? Then the request is lost, right? That's as simple as this. But then maybe in PWA, what you can do here is that, well, also in a web application, you might come up with other strategy. However, I'm just talking about like out of the box solution in PWA. So what you do in PWA is that when you post, then if that fails, you know before it comes to user because you capture it in service worker. So you can actually store the request in a cache and say, okay, I'm actually adding a note right now, for example, in my note app, or I'm adding a post to my blog and it just fails. Okay, let me cache this, but let me show my user you successfully done. Perfect. Then you can have a script in a background sync, for example, solution in your service worker. Once the internet is coming back, once you can have even periodic, for example, let's say every 1 hour or 10, I don't know, like 10 hours, you can just periodically check this cache, which you stored these failed requests, and then post it to the where it should be posted, right? So here is where you can actually sync your data. You can have these background things, you can have these periodic background things, or you can have even in a service worker, when there is a request, let's say a read request, I want to read something. So already cache that request. You want to show to your user. What you can do is you fetch the actual request in the service worker. You fetch it from your online DB if internet is available, and then update your cache and respond with that cache. So then here is a sync. But what if you want to do this and then your online DB is off? that's fine. You already cached it once, so you can at least show your um, user some data, right? So it's a lot of possibility, to be honest. You a lot of possibilities. So I can give you maybe until end of the week a lot of examples how we can use service worker for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Majid, for your explanation. But there, I think I have some doubt in what you said, that is about the cache. Where is the cache stored? Is in the, for example, in the mobile phone, or in the browser? So when we make a request, and we use cache, where does this information is stored?
Yes, that's a good question. I mentioned it briefly in my talk. It's actually cached in the browser in the client
Okay,
computer. So
so
if for some reason client after we cached everything, it just go and delete the browser, then okay, it's done. Or even if they go and explicitly delete the cache, then it's also done. So you can't do anything anyway.
So when we install a PWA, so there is needed any permission from the user about the storage, or so we can freely install a PWA without any user permission, right?
Um, this cache does not need a permission, so it just looks like. I bet that you've worked with IndexedDB or let's say local storage, right? So local storage. Why do we have a cache? A new storage. This is another storage, a local storage, but not that local storage. We are reusing it. I mean, a user storage. But the reason is that first of all, in local storage, the main one that we use, it's a synchronous storage, right? It's not suitable for doing operational, like performance operational job because it's synchronous and it's
Mhm.
also very limited, as you know. So it's not very suitable for storing request and response. So the new cache, it's similar to those, except that it's completely working asynchronous and it's just designed to store request and respond. So it's a type of a special storage right now. So you can use, definitely you can use, for example, IndexedDB in your service worker because that is also asynchronous.
Mhm.
So you can also use that as your main database if you want, like for querying and for things like that. Like you have a, let's say, a database of something, and then you want to add these data. Like you have a list of devices for users which you want to show in the website on the website, right? You can store
Yeah.
those objects into your IndexedDB, and you can actually work with that. Actually, I made actually application with both, working with both cache API and also the IndexedDB. So the IndexedDB is suitable for storing objects and these type of data, and then the cache API is for storing request and response.
Thank you, Majid. I think your answer is a lot. We can understand in plainly what the answer, responding the question
Perfect.
perfectly. Yes. So meanwhile, we don't have any other question. In just making this one just for curiosity, do you already developed any application or any PWA for a foldable phone?
I'll be honest with you, no, at least not at the moment. But this is something on my list to give it a try because I know there are new possibilities.
Yeah.
But I have a good, since I am talking about Flutter today, I have also news that Flutter 2, by contribution of Microsoft, and Microsoft has a team for Flutter, now supports dual screens out of the box, so you can actually use it in Flutter. but I have
Amazing.
not actually used it myself with any web application. But it's on my to-do list because I know that these type of devices are coming and people are getting used to it day by day. So it's good to learn about like how it works and how we can make it better and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And since the moment a PWA and mainly the Flutter, it's a multi-platform. I think it's important also to look into the future or the new kind of devices that is now the foldable phones. And I think that it's also a challenge for the designers and also the developers
Absolutely, absolutely.
creating
You are
creating some apps for this foldable phones. So and also
absolutely you're right.
that's a great news that we have also now Flutter too, and that allows to develop and use multiple screens, as I think I understand. So it's a great
Yes,
thing.
it does.
So I think we don't have any more questions. So probably we can wrapping up our event. And of course, Majid, again, thank you for being here, being host today. And I will
It's a
just
pleasure.
making up the event. So just a moment, and just to present here to her who are assisting us, we, as I said, we have more than 15 tech sessions available in our YouTube channel. Majid's talk will be also available on our channel, so you can see this video later. And also, in the meantime, you can also check the talk that was given by Thomas Pierce about the introduction to PWS. And I think these two tech sessions is it's a good contribution for this great technology that is the PWA. So again, Majid, thank you for being here, and it was indeed a very interesting talk. So finally, don't forget to follow or reach us in social media. Don't forget also to subscribe our channel and click in the like button. And of course, see you next time. Bye.